Okay, so welcome to the webinar for the Don't Wake Mom program for National Engineering Month. So tonight I'm just going to go over the basic program, a little bit of background, and everything that you need to be able to run the program effectively. I'm going to try and go through it as quick as possible so we don't take up too much of your time. And thank you for joining us. So just to go over what we're going to do, we're going to have a quick introduction to Engineers of Tomorrow, quick background to the program, the key messages that we're trying to get across, then more into the program in detail. So the timing, what will be in your kit, the actual activities that you'll be working with, and then just a quick wrap up. And you'll have some chance to ask any questions that you have afterwards. So just type them in the chat and we'll get to that at the end. Okay, so Engineers of Tomorrow is a Engineers Without Borders Canada venture, which was launched a couple of years ago. And it mostly focuses on outreach within Canada and trying to change the public perception of engineering. Trying to get across the fact that engineers aren't stuffy old men in suits or in hard hats. We come in all shapes and sizes and do an incredibly wide range of different things. And there is place for young people to come in and find something interesting and really make a difference through engineering. So most of the programs that are run through Engineers of Tomorrow are things like National Engineering Month, also the Engineers in Residence program in Ontario, and of course this program is also running through them as well. So this program is actually in its second year. Last year we were just kind of a ragtag bunch that didn't really fit anywhere. This year we folded into the Engineers of Tomorrow and increased from the 29 workshops that we did last year in the GTA all the way up to 80 plus workshops that we're doing this year across the entire province of Ontario. And that's going to be working with over 1,800 Girl Guides this year from age 5 all the way up to 18, which is an incredible leap. And to do that, we have an absolutely amazing team of 81 volunteers, which is absolutely phenomenal. I couldn't have imagined having that last year. And the main aim of this program is to try and connect those people who've already chosen engineering and get them in contact with the potential engineers of the future and get them interested in STEM and understanding what STEM is. The other side of that is the Girl Guide program, which we originally started with because I am a Girl Guide leader myself. A lot of guiders find it very difficult to be able to figure out what to do with STEM, especially if they don't come from STEM backgrounds. So by taking that portion and giving them a ready meeting, a volunteer to run the activities for them, it takes a lot of stress off them and also gives the girls an incredible and really fun experience. Part of the reason that we're really effective is because it brings that STEM element to the participants instead of having to bring the participants out like a lot of the one-day events that people have to sign up to. And I'll explain a little bit more about why that's effective in just a minute. So our approach to messaging, we try and focus on more of the why of engineering, the personal side. So why did you choose engineering, as opposed to what is it that you do within engineering? And we try and keep it simple. Simple is always better. A lot of the participants are quite young, so a really complicated explanation they're not going to understand. They really need it broken down into very, very simple terms. And so this diagram just shows a little bit about the general philosophy. So within the general population of students that could go into engineering, there's a general subset that may go into engineering anyway without any need for any external pressure. But there are a wider range of students who may enter engineering but don't really know what engineering is. And those typical messages of, you should do engineering because you're good at math, you're good at science, maybe those don't appeal to the rest of those students that aren't going into engineering. So by changing up messaging and giving a whole range of different messages, you're able to tie in better to what those individual students might find important. So maybe the social factors towards engineering helping people, or engineering helping the environment, or those different types of messages. Those are what helps draw in a bigger range of people. So these are what we classify as the most effective messages. That's a lot of words. So to put it a little bit more simply, firstly, diversity. There's a whole range of different ways that you can get involved in engineering. And we shape the future. So we're constantly evolving. We're constantly finding new technologies, new ways to do things. We use creativity. People don't think of engineers as being creative, but really that's exactly what we are. We're coming up with new ideas and we're making them a reality. Also, health and safety. So we're always working to make sure that people are safe, that they're happy, that they're enjoying the products that they're working with, or the building that they're in, or whatever they happen to be encountering engineering in. And we really do help other people. We make their lives a lot better. So to just look a little bit about who it is you're going to be working with. So this year we are just working with the Girl Guides of Canada again. To answer the obvious question, yes, we would like to work with the Scouts, definitely, and that is a work in progress. So hopefully we will have them on board for next year. So within Girl Guides, there are 5 age ranges, and we work with all of them. There's the Sparks that are 5 to 6, Brownies 7 to 8, Guides 9 to 11, Pathfinders 12 to 14, and Rangers of 15 to 18. So this Don't Wake Mom program actually works for all of these age groups. It's a very simple program, and depending on the age range that you're working with, you can really tailor the program. So you can simplify it if you're working with Sparks, or you can go into a lot more of the science and the detail with the older girls to get them thinking a little bit more about what it is that they're doing. So to move on to sort of more about the program. First of all, and most important, timing is everything. This program is very easy to allow to overrun. And we do try and encourage you to stay within the posted timeline for this. Be flexible. If you're running short on time, skip an activity, or find a way to hurry or help or encourage girls to work quickly. Just because an activity is in the instructions doesn't mean that you have to do it if your timeline is really short. So ideally, volunteers, if you can arrive 15 minutes before the posted start time, that just helps you to get in contact with the guider that's there, your contact guider, figure out the room layout, how you want to set everything up, figure out are some of the activities not going to work because the space is a little bit too small or in weird shape. How are you going to get the girls to work in their groups? Are they going to be at tables? Are you just going to put them on the floor? How are you going to be most comfortable presenting? Also, make sure that you account when you're planning the program for time for girls to arrive, and also have the traditional opening and closing ceremonies as part of their meeting. I would usually account at least 15 minutes for that. So just because you have an hour posted doesn't mean that you really have that hour to run through the program. So sort of target timelines would be Sparks around 45 minutes, Brownies and Guides, you've got about an hour, Pathfinders and Rangers, try and stick to about an hour and 15 minutes. For those last two groups, you probably will have a little bit of time left over if you do manage to hit that, particularly with the Pathfinders and Rangers, because they usually have about 2 hours for their meeting. That's a really good thing. You're always better running a little bit under for a couple of reasons. One, it gives them time to ask you questions, get a little bit more detail from you about your personal experience, and anything that they're particularly interested in after doing the activity, they can discuss that more. On the other side, you can also continue the program a little bit more if you have the extra time. So after you've already done the wrap-up discussion, maybe they want to take what they learned in that discussion and reapply it back to the activity and see if they can improve. And that's also fine. Or maybe you want to continue the discussion a little bit longer and draw out some interesting points in that discussion. And again, so simplify activities for younger girls and expand them for the older girls. Flexibility really is key. You can change the activities up whichever way you feel most comfortable. Okay, so what's in your kit? So you have a few things in your kit. You're going to have a facilitator program guide, some game cards, participant instruction sheets, which will be one per team. That shouldn't say RoboKits, that should say cardboard boxes and materials, and that will be one per team. And also the NEM 2015 crests. Some groups may have the swag, the NEM 2015 swag from our sponsors, as well as tape and glue. That will depend if we had to mail out your kit to you. If we had to mail it out to you, then likely you haven't got that, just for the saving on cost to meet our budget. So I'm just going to switch across to video screen for a minute. Hi there. So you should be able to see me. And what I'm going to do is just show you what I mean by all of these things. So in your kit, you will have this little booklet here. So it looks like this. This is the facilitator guide. So this has all of the activities listed. This is also available for you to download already. I did send out a link to you that you should have had when you got the email with the attachment. These are all available online to be downloaded. And that goes through everything that you could possibly need. Also, these are the instruction sheets for the participants. I realize this is coming up backwards. I'm not entirely sure why, but that's basically what it looks like. You also get some cool cardboard boxes. These just fold up like this, so the teams can do that. And some materials, so bubble wrap, paper, foam, corrugated card, popsicle sticks. We also have the game cards here and the NEM 2015 crests. And that will be the most important thing to some people. So if I just go over the activities pretty briefly. So the first activity will be you introducing yourself. So this shouldn't last very, very long. It should be very quick, just a couple of minutes. And again, we want to pull it back to the why of engineering. So why do you do what you do? What is the end result of your job, as opposed to what is it that you do? For example, I could say, hi, I'm Rose. I'm a mechanical engineer. And for my job, I design sheet metal boxes which I have to fit electronics in, provide all the mounting hardware and screws and nuts, make sure that everything fits together properly, and then do some complicated heat calculations to make sure the whole thing isn't going to overheat. That's not going to be very exciting to probably around 90% of the girls involved. Alternatively, I could say, hi, I'm Rose. I'm a mechanical engineer, and I work with around another 50 engineers, and our job is to keep you guys safe. We do that by designing special fire alarm systems like the ones that you see at home or in school, which I think is really important because I know that if there is ever a fire, you'll be able to get out safely. So that just provides a little bit of something that they can relate to, something that they can understand. I don't need to mention metal boxes. If they're interested, they will ask. But they're getting the idea that engineers help people. Engineers have this human factor as well. So after the quick introduction, we have an icebreaker activity, which is the engineering card game. So to do this game, you would give each girl one of these cards, which have a different type of engineering across the front. Obviously, for the youngest girls, they're not going to be able to maybe read this. There's also some information on the back about what exactly that type of engineer does, and they're not going to be able to read that. But there is a nice big picture, so you can get them to think about, well, what might an engineer do that has something to do with that? Or give them a brief explanation. You also have the guiders there, so please use them. They can definitely help with things like that. If you have a large group, pair up girls, put them in small groups if you need to make sure that everyone gets access to a card, and that'll help a little bit of discussion. So what you're going to do with these cards is give a series of statements and get them to decide whether their engineer would do that or wouldn't do that. So the way that you can do this, there's a whole range of ways. So you could say, if you think that your engineer would do this, stand up. Or you could divide the room, so one side is a yes, one side is a no. Again, it's going to depend on what space you've got, how many girls you've got, and how you feel comfortable doing it. So be flexible. So some examples would be, would your engineer use a screwdriver? Some of them might look at it and go, well, probably not, and they can stand on one side or another. There isn't really a specific right or wrong answer for any of these. It's more a case of getting them to think a little bit. If they can provide a justification, particularly if they're older, then maybe say, okay, you said no, why? Why did you say no? But keep it short. Don't go into too much detail. And then you can do things like, would your engineer design something to allow you to brush your teeth? And again, with the younger girls, thinking about the actual toothbrush is probably as far as you need to go. With the oldest girls, sort of 15 to 18, you can start drawing out all sorts of tenuous links. So someone had to design the toothbrush, someone had to pick the material, someone had to figure out the manufacturing process for the toothbrush. You had someone for the toothpaste, you had water coming from your tap. How did it get from the local water source to your tap? Are you sitting in the house while you're brushing your teeth? Who designed the house? Who made sure that it was safe? How did that toothbrush get from the factory to you? Did it have to come in some sort of transportation on a road? You can keep pulling out as many little strings as you can think about, and wherever that discussion leads. You can also go for ones like, would your engineer only be able to be a man? Or would your engineer drive a train? That's a popular misconception about engineering. And the answer is some of them might, maybe. If they're designing the trains, they might have to test them, possibly. And you can also throw in some sound-related ones to tie into the program. So things like, would your engineer try and minimize sound or try and maximize sound? So really you want to limit this to around 10 minutes. It shouldn't take too long. Really try and stick to that time limit though. So you probably only want a couple of different statements, and that will probably get their thoughts flowing. Then from that, we're going to move into some of the sciencey part. So the point of this is to kind of explain a little bit more of the background around what they're going to need to know to be able to do the main activity effectively. So the whole premise of this program is to do with sound, and particularly we have a storyline. Now you can change the storyline whatever you think might appeal to your group and whatever you think you can pull off. So the basic storyline is your mum has a really bad headache, but you practice the violin and you have this huge recital tomorrow, but if you don't practice, you're probably going to hit a lot of really bad notes. But if you do practice, then mum's going to get really mad because she's going to have a headache even worse. So what can you do? Well, you need to practice in your bedroom. So how can you soundproof your bedroom in order to avoid your mum waking up from her nap? You can come up with other ideas. With guides, a really good one is at camp. It's 2 o'clock in the morning and your guider is getting very, very mad because you keep waking them up. How can you soundproof your room to stop your guider getting mad? So with that in mind, we need to know a little bit about sound in order to know about soundproofing. So we're used to making things louder. We always try and amplify things. We want louder music. We want better quality music. But engineers also spend a lot of time trying to make things quieter. So examples of that, you can have a look around the room. You can ask the participants to try and point out some things. So you can do things like windows, the double panes, stop the noise from outside, the traffic on the road from coming in. You might have air vents. Maybe those are designed to help reduce some of the noise and vibrations from the air flowing out in order to reduce the amount of sound. There's a whole myriad of other really useful ones that you can come up with. And then we want to talk about, okay, well, that's what noise is, but what is noise in the science sense? So it's unwanted sound. But what is sound? So that's when we can explain about sound being little vibrations in the air called sound waves. And the shape of these waves and their reactions when they hit different materials is why we hear some different sounds. So we have some basic things that we want to get across about the sound waves. Mostly for the youngest girls, we just want to explain the concept of reflection and absorption. So reflection is like when you stand in a big tunnel and you shout and it echoes back. So it hits off all of those hard stone or whatever material walls and it bounces back towards your ears. Absorption is more like when you shout into a pillow and it comes out all muffled because it's absorbing that sound. So for the older girls where you've got a little bit more time, there is a little game that you can play. So you can either get them to stand in a big circle and join hands, and then they pass the wave like a Mexican wave all the way around the circle. So one person after the other, so not everyone is going at the same time. And then you can call out different actions. So things like high would be for a high-pitched sound. So that's when the wave peaks are really close together. So that's when they would step closer together between themselves and their neighbor to pass the wave along. Low pitched when they're really far apart, so they would take a step back, stretch out their arms to pass the wave along. Amplify, you'd make the wave bigger. You can get them to go up and then down to the floor. They're young, they can do that. Dampening, making the height a little bit lower. And then you've got things like reflection, where it would go back around the circle, and absorption, where it would just stop. The other way of doing that would be to just have them standing in free space and do the wave on their own, and shout out the different actions and get them to respond to that. It's just a little bit more of a fun way of going through the science without it being too boring. Because this isn't in school, so we do want to make the activities a lot of fun. Okay, so that should take probably around 10 minutes again. If you are running short on time, if you started a little bit late or the first activity ran over a little bit, skip that game and move on. Again, that's really up to you, but do bear that in mind, that that one's a really easy one to skip. And you can always do it at the end as well, if you have extra time left at the end. So the next thing is to explain about how to measure noise. And this is partly for managing expectations, because most of these age groups will expect to see a scale run linearly. So you may have already seen the Don't Wake Mom app that we managed to get developed. So it looks just like this. It's really, really simple. It has a decibel meter. That's pretty much it. It works from the just through the microphone on the phone. It is only just for Android, so if you don't have one for Android, don't have an Android phone, there are other apps that are available, such as the let's see, what's it called? It is the Sound Meter app, and that works exactly the same way. It just has the decibel meter, but it doesn't have the noise. So the noise comes up when you hit the play. And as you can see, it gets pretty loud and it's very, very annoying. So that would be one reason why we might want to try and get rid of some of that sound. So the first thing you want to do is kind of show them that and explain that the decibel scale doesn't go up linearly. It goes up like that. It goes up to the power of 10. So every 2 decibels is 10 times louder than 1 decibel. So the main reason for doing this is because they will see the original sound being around 70. And they'll also see, you should show the ambient noise level. So get everyone to be completely silent and take an ambient noise reading. It's probably going to be around 50 if you can get everyone to hush. And once they finish the activity, you'd expect the results to be around the mid-60s. So from the point of view of most of the participants, going from 70 to like 65 doesn't look huge, but when you put it in perspective of, well, that's 10 times every time you go down 1, that's a huge amount of noise that you've managed to reduce. There's also some useful decibel levels here as well. So things like a normal conversation is around 60 decibels, and thunder is 120 decibels. Now, if you don't have a smartphone and you're not able to do the measurements, don't worry. The other way of doing the measurement at the end is to do a voting system. So you would have one team try it, and then the next team try it, and well, was that louder or quieter than the last one, and then the next one was that louder and quieter than the current reigning champion, and so on until you've managed to test them all against each other as a benchmark. And that's the easiest way to do it. Okay, so onto the actual activity. So you should demonstrate the beep sound and test layout. So I like to use a extra speaker. That way I can just put it a little bit further away so that the microphone isn't sort of all in the same place, just because you're going to need to put the sound inside the box. Again, if you've only got one phone and you don't have an external speaker, play the beep noise and do a voting to figure out how loud or quiet they've managed to reach. That isn't a problem. So for the activity, the participants should be split into groups of 2 or 3. I wouldn't recommend having any groups of 4 or more. They should definitely be 3 or 2, and you will have enough materials for that. So each team will originally get the instruction sheet and a box. So what I would recommend is the first thing you do is tell them to tape the box together. So they just take the box and apply a little bit of tape. So it's nice and simple. You can just tape around the corners. Now, in terms of other materials that the guiders are supposed to be preparing for the program, you should hopefully have hot glue available. If you're worried about how the kids will be able to handle that, what I would recommend is you ask one of the guiders that are there just to man a glue station. And that's perfectly okay, and I'm sure they'd be happy to do that. That way you've always got someone there to supervise them while they're doing that. You should never be left alone with the girls, so don't worry about that. That has been, the guiders already know that. That's pretty standard. And you can definitely ask for their help. They are there to help you as well. So you end up with a box like this, and this is the premise of your room. So it's going to go upside down on the speaker like this. You're going to put the speaker inside there. This would be on a table. This goes over the top. We have a couple of rules. So materials can only be attached to the inside of the box. And you can explain that this is for practical reasons. If you're inside the room, how are you going to get to the outside of the room to tape it? Would you have to be on the roof of your house? Would that be a little bit dangerous and impractical? So it has to go on the inside only. And you have to leave a little bit of space inside the box for the speaker to fit. So you can't pack it too full. Now, we have 5 different types of material, but they only get to choose 3. So of the bubble wrap, paper, corrugated paper, popsicle sticks, and foam, they can only have 3 of those. So your kits have been prepared pretty strategically so that you have exactly the right number of materials for the number of groups. And they are mixed in so that they can only have 3 types, and they can't all have the same 3. So there isn't enough bubble wrap for every single team to have bubble wrap. And that was done just so that you can get that little bit more diversity with the solutions and get them really thinking a little bit more than just, oh, I want bubble wrap. So the best way to divide that up is to say, okay, explain that they have limited resources. So the resources are going to be first come, first served. And that the first thing they need to do is put together their box, and then they can nominate one person from their team to come up and get their materials. So you can be as strict or as loose with this as you want, but I would definitely say they need to have their box put together before they come for their materials. And if they send up more than one person, tell them to go back to the back of the line. They'll complain, but I think, to me, that's fair. You can choose whatever you want to do. So they'll end up with some materials. So for example, if I put foam, I could put foam inside my box and just smush it in like this. And they can glue it, they can tape it, they can figure out different ways of putting it in. And really encourage them to think about what they did in the last activity for reflection, for absorption. What materials are going to be best to do that? How will the arrangement of those materials help? And once we have everything in the box, that's when they can come and test. And you can run that. Now you could have a test setup. It's probably not going to be very accurate while they're still doing the activity, for the fact that they've got all of the background noise. One thing I did find when I ran this program with a group of older girls and boys at the time, they all had a cell phone or an iPad or an iPod, and they just played some music and they put it inside their box, and they were testing and refining and iterating as they went. I would definitely encourage that. If they want to do that, definitely. I definitely wouldn't say no to that. So they've got around 15 to 20 minutes to complete this. That should be enough time. And then at the end of that, you really want to draw them back to all come to one group for testing, so that everyone gets to see how everyone else performed. So depending on how much time you have at this point, you can ask each team to present what they did with their design, give themselves a team name, and then do the test. If you're running short on time, you probably don't want to do the presentation part, and that's all fine. But make sure that before you do each group's testing, everyone is silent, because that way you're going to get the best results. And then you should also in your pack have a score sheet. I don't think I have a copy with me, but it's basically just a table where you can write in their team name and the decibel level that they hit at the end. And then you can start discussing what you saw. So it's really asking questions, getting them to provide the answers and have the discussion amongst themselves. So things like, well, what were the differences between the quietest and the loudest bedrooms? So maybe they chose different materials, maybe they used the same materials but in different ways. Maybe they just stuck it on a little bit more efficiently. How did any of the teams change their design while they were building? Did they keep changing? That's okay. Did any teams share materials? You can have a think about what you saw during the activity and draw that out into the discussion at the end. Then you can bring it back to the real world and say, well, would this actually be a practical solution for your bedroom while you're practicing the violin? And you can have a look at some of the designs and say, well, I packed this so full of bubble wrap. Would I be able to stand up in this room? Where would my bed go if this was my bedroom and it's all completely packed and flat at the bottom? Maybe that's not so practical. What might be some better ways of doing it? Something completely different. So maybe we just give mom some earplugs. Would that be a better solution? And then maybe what kind of skills would you or did you use that might be important for an engineer to have? So that's going to be dependent on the group, what you are able to pull out. So definitely reflect on the activity and kind of highlight the best examples. So things like teamwork, creativity, problem solving, resourcefulness, being able to use the materials that you provided when you were the last team up to collect them, and all you had left was a couple of sheets of paper and popsicle sticks. how did that work compared to if you've moved a little bit faster in your design process? And helping others. So by doing this activity, you're helping your mum to sleep and get over her bad headache. So that is definitely helpful. And that is literally the end of the program after that end discussion. So once that's all done, clean up. Definitely get the participants to clean up as well. If you still have any time at that point, which you probably won't, you could be pushed for time by that point. If you do have time, then if you're able to gather any feedback, that would be incredibly useful. One way that you can do that is just with strips of paper, ask them just one question. Just one question is enough. For the youngest girls, maybe you just want to ask them, draw an engineer, or what is an engineer, or something that they can do simply. For the 5 to 6 year olds, I wouldn't bother at all, just because it takes a little bit too much time for them. So if you have sticky notes, something like that for the older girls, ask one question, then take a picture and please email them to me, because I love to collect these, and it's really great for understanding where our weaknesses in the program are and how effective the messaging is getting across through the program that we have, so that we can really build on that for next year. So that's pretty much everything. Just a couple of last things. So we are on social media, and if you're able to get involved in that online presence, that would be fantastic. Definitely use the hashtag NEM 2015. That's National Engineering Month 2015. It'd be great to get that trending a little bit more. Obviously, hashtag engineering is a great one. That EOT one is still incorrect. That is actually EWB EOT. Rosemary Almond, that's me. I will definitely retweet you if you tweet to me. And NEM Ontario, Engineers Canada, and of course Girl Guides of Canada. That would be fantastic. You can take pictures during the event. What I would say is right at the beginning, before you take any photos, check with the guider that's in charge and just ask if that's okay with them. Most shouldn't have a problem, but there may be some girls in the units that don't have photo releases for whatever reason. So the guiders will know which girls they are and be able to make sure that you don't take any pictures with those girls in. Alternatively, ask one of the guiders to take photos. A lot of the units do take photos anyway, for their own records to share with their girls afterwards. So please encourage them to share the photos too, or to use your camera, or whatever works for you. And finally, our next social media campaign, and we're going to try and launch this around March 1st, is the engineering selfie. So this is to try and help change those public perceptions. We want to help people understand what engineering really is. Show the engineering engineers and people within the engineering profession and engineering industry really do all sorts of things, and they do some really cool things. So that's a picture of me with a unit that I designed that actually got installed at the big office towers downtown Toronto a couple of weeks ago, and I was there during the installation process. So that was really cool for me. So if you can take a photo with something that you did, focus on why you did it, and then use the engineering selfie hashtag and challenge someone else so that we can try and get this to go a little bit further. Our aim is to beat the ice bucket challenge, though that's a pretty big leap to go. So I think that's everything from me. Thank you very much for attending, and I will take a few questions afterwards.